Good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening, and thank you very much for being part of this live stream. There's a plenty of people waiting today, and I am flattered by the interest and the, let's say, the love, maybe we can call it, that you demonstrate for this channel every time. So welcome to Millennium 7 Star, the channel that help you make sense of military history and military technology, and as usual stay till the end, because the stuff that we're going to discuss is not going to be the usual stuff that we find on YouTube. The subject for today's live stream is the F-35 and some points that I believe are weak points of this platform. And these weak points are actually together with a lot of other strong points, and we will get into the discussion very quick in a minute. As usual, we are having the presentation for about half an hour, 40 minutes. I will try to be as concise as possible because the fun part is actually having a chat with you guys and see what is going to appear in the chat, and have some discussion and have some fun. We're going to stay together for about an hour or even a bit more if we can, and if there is interest. So, well, thank you very much for being here again, and let's get started. So, the F-35 and 5 weak points about the F-35. Actually, there will be a bonus point at the end of the presentation, so stay till the end. But we are also talking about the other strong points that this platform has, because let's put it bluntly, I've been critic before of the F-35. I've been critic about the F-35 before from some aspects, and I've sort of touched the kind of things that we're discussing today already, but this is sort of a more organic presentation. But the problem of the F-35 is not that it is a rubbish platform or a rubbish aircraft, like some of the harshest critics are saying. Far from that. Actually, the F-35 is the most technologically advanced aircraft that is currently available on the market. And now technology may not be automatically a synonymous of effectiveness, but definitely is a good proxy. So there are really few doubts that there is anything else around that is as sophisticated as the F-35. We spoke a lot about the Sukhoi 57, and we actually shown that it is much better than is normally discussed. There's, in terms of executing its particular type of mission, is probably very effective, but still it doesn't have the level of sophistication that the F-35 has. So yes, this is a point I want to be clear. From this point of view, it is a game changer. And those who say that this aircraft is rubbish, I don't believe they are right, okay? And it also an aircraft which is actually easy for the pilot, in the sense that you don't have to have really ace pilot level, pilots that are at ace level to be effectively use the aircraft, which someone says it's probably is not a good thing to have pilots that are not very capable to fly. But from an operational point of view, I'm sure that everybody can see the point, no? And in and in particular, always from the point of view of the pilot, it is probably the best situational awareness that is available on any aircraft. Now, some people believe, the F-35 fanboys believe that the only aircraft that has this kind of capability of presenting the situational awareness is just the F-35. That's not true. This is something that comes from quite far. The Swedish were actually among the forerunners from this point of view. And at least the Gripen and the Rafale are not too dissimilar from the level of situational awareness that is available to the pilot. Probably the F-35 has reached a level of interaction that pretty much all the pilots agree saying that is probably best available today. And yes, and definitely among this technology and to build this situational awareness, the aircraft has some really great and innovative sensor. The fact that the pilot can see through the aircraft, the fact that it is finally there's finally complete integration between radar and infrared search and track. It's definitely a complete platform, and in terms of sensors, it's probably very capable. Among the sensors, I'm also considering the electronic supporting measure and all the electronic intelligence that the aircraft is capable of gathering, which seems, again, this is the kind of stuff that you would never know, but from the voices that there are out there, from press voices and the interviews from the pilots and so on, it seems an aircraft which is probably very effective from this point of view. And in fact, I'm not seeing the Air Force, the United States Air Force, actually planning for a specific dedicated version, a growler-like version or anything like that, because it's sort of an aircraft that can do the job by itself. And finally, last but not least, is stealth, and it's one of the most stealthy available. And stealth, even if it is probably overrated by the fanboys, it is definitely something which is very useful. Everybody is trying to reduce the radar cross-section in a way or another, and that is the reason why the aircraft is... and with the F-35, this has been brought to apparently to a very high level. So if the numbers that we know and numbers that are being flung, if the numbers that are available on the press, on the public, and the open source intelligence are actually true, yes, it's a very stealthy aircraft, which is a good thing to do, even for an aircraft like this. So definitely, this is a great aircraft. It's not an aircraft that is. It's not an aircraft that is rubbish, as some people say. I think that the impression that some people have that the aircraft was rubbish, it was due to the fact that the program was not really managed well, and for mostly political reasons, it was deployed and delivered to the Air Force and the other, but mainly the Air Force, too early, in a condition that was not ready. Now there are still problems, but they're progressively being solved. What do you expect with such a complicated program to be on time and on budget? It's going to be late, it's going to cost more, and you will find problems in the future. If you are willing to accept this, and obviously there's no doubt that the Air Force choice was exactly this, then you're then you're fine. I mean, probably these costs and these problems have been factored in since the beginning, even if you can't tell this publicly. So it seems that I'm actually praising and not making a live stream about the weak points of the aircraft. But actually, nothing in the world is perfect. Yes, because there are some weak points, but they are mostly not related to the design of the aircraft. As I already said, the aircraft is not perfect yet. There are few issues that sort of concerns me that probably is going to be with the plane for the entire life of the plane, but they're not, if you want, they're not critical for the mission. The weak points I'm going to discuss are mostly related to the fact that the F-35 is a system that is going to be employed within the context of the air combat and air power doctrine of the United States, and to a lesser extent of the NATO alliance, of the stricter allies of the United States. Also, the kind of problems that I'm going to mention may be not unique to the F-35, and these kind of issues may exist and may come out in the most challenging scenario, the one it's reasonable to plan for, which is actually a near-peer confrontation. This is the most challenging situation, and that is what should be the reference scenario if you want to assess what is going on. Again, what follows is actually my opinion. Some others that is shared by some analysts, but so I'm not alone in this. But it's an open discussion. Okay, it's for every choice of this size, every choice that has such momentous choice may not. It is impossible that is not going to create discussions. May not be accepted by everyone in the same way. So it's what we are saying is basically pretty natural. So the first weak point is that there are too many. Not there being built too many, but the fact that the F-35 is actually replacing too many aircraft types. It is a multi-mission platform, it is a omni-role platform, and so that's normal, but the consequence of what is happening is that I'm saying we because I am from Italy, so I live in the UK, which are two important NATO countries. So I'm part of the group, but I'm sort of part of this Western coalition. But in this, the Western coalition, the US allies are putting all the eggs in one basket. And variety actually is definitely bad for logistics, is definitely bad for costs, but is very, very good for resilience. Because what can be effective against one platform, against a set of sensors, against a set of weapons, may not be as effective against another set of weapons. And so if you have different aircraft in service, that genetically add resilience. It is the same thing that happens in biological systems that have a large biodiversity. Arrives a bacterium, a new disease actually attacks one species, and pity for the species, but everybody else is, but there are many others, so the environment as a whole is not suffering. This is the air power that can be deployed if you have two similar aircraft rather than one. it is an inherently safer and more resilient choice. I made a video some time ago with terrible audio, so I don't know how many of you have seen it. I suspect not too many. But I made a video with a terrible audio about the Indian Air Force that has a lot of different models of aircraft in service. Those are probably a bit too many, but it is an element of resilience for the Indians. In the fact that they have this mix of Western and Russian systems, it only adds to the resilience of the overall system. And I mean, for the F-35, the problem is even worse because it is a very informatized aircraft now. Pretty much every platform today is computer-based, but the F-35 is even more so. And I mean, this is only increasing the risk because it's something else that can go wrong, actually. Sometimes software can produce some strange quirks that people don't really, it takes a while to actually understand why. And that's an extra risk. And situations like this, at least in peacetime, may force you to ground the whole force if there's something, an accident happened, and in maybe I don't know, maybe an incident bad enough, grave enough to actually ground the whole force. And actually, the United States Air Force, from my point of view, actually starts sort of recognizing this, because the recent discussion that has been that we had about building a new 4++ generation aircraft to be used as a sort of a low part of the mix, actually go in this direction. I don't know how explicit is this, but that's the fact. So, point one, too many eggs in one basket, too many F-35. Point two is too complex. Now, complexity also equates to effectiveness, so complexity is not a bad thing per se. It is something that the aircraft of the future will probably be more and more complex, or if not the aircraft itself, the technology to build the aircraft will be more and more complex. It will require more breakthroughs. Obviously, the fact that it is complex means that it is expensive, but it's not too much expensive if compared with other jets. The cost of a single unit to be acquired by the United States, probably thanks to the scale economy, to be honest, but it's not too different from the cost of a Rafale or the cost of an F-16 Block 70 or anything like that. So it is expensive, but it is not terribly expensive. Problem is, what is expensive is the logistic chain that exists to keep the aircraft flying. That logistics chain is expensive, but what matters the most is vulnerable. This is typically American in the sense that the Americans have this style of war, have this style of expeditionary war where they have this abundance of means and they can produce a logistic. They can produce a logistic environment, a logistic situation that can maintain even an aircraft that requires a lot of work in a lot of sophisticated infrastructures to actually work, and that's perfectly fine. why it is complicated. Well, for example, it is one thing it requires that a lot of data are moving back and forth from the aircraft and the squadrons deployed, from the Alice or its replacement, are moving back and forth with Lockheed Martin, moving back and forth with the United States in a sort of automated manner. You need communications to do that, and you need wideband communication, and this is expensive and complex to set up. It requires specialized facilities for the maintenance. The level of maintenance beyond the squadron level for the F-35 is actually quite complex. It requires people who are actually trained to do that, and mind the fact that there is a limited supply of people that are actually capable of dismantling an F-35, fixing what needs to be fixed, and putting it together is an extreme vulnerability. If an opponent finds a way to actually sort of poison all of them when they go to the canteen, or most of them when they go to the canteen, you have neutralized the effectiveness of the F-35 fleet in the medium-long term. It's not that simple, no. And then the other element is actually that is definitely something which is not designed for austere environments. It's something that is expected to be operated by well-furnished, well set up air bases, safe, where the ground crews can operate safely. And in fact, I have the doubt in how well could it be operating from improvised infrastructures, because this is something that is almost certain that is going to happen in the case of confrontation with China or Russia. There will be all the air bases will be under constant pressure by the opponents to actually make them inoperable, or actually damage the level of sorties that these bases can generate. So you may want to disperse the aircraft, you may want to operate them from something which is actually improvised, and there's also the possibility that you need to operate the aircraft when it's partially damaged. If you literally scratch the paint on the F-35, stealth is gone. And okay, the aircraft is still very capable, but at this point is not much better than a 4++ generation. So if it is that easy to be degraded, what was the point to have it in the first place? Now, maybe I'm totally wrong. Maybe the actual answer to these two questions, the two that you see in italic on the presentation, is actually that it can operate very well from improvised structure, and it can fly even if it is damaged, it is heavily damaged, and can fly a mission even if it is damaged. I don't know. Maybe it is some secret, but there are no data. It doesn't seem that the operativity of the aircraft is going in this direction. It seems that it is going in the opposite direction, to actually rely on a heavy logistical queue, logistic tail actually better, that is going to support it. So point 2, yeah, it is too complex, requires a logistical tail which is actually vulnerable all back to from the front line to the United States. Third point is, it is an aircraft that loves having friends. Part of its networking is actually, and sharing of information is actually its strong points. It can improve the effectiveness of previous generation aircrafts, and in general, the level of interoperability between the aircraft is very high, and this is what actually is used to. It is the element, it is the technology that actually builds the situational awareness that pilots love so much, and rightly so. I'm not saying this is wrong, but that's part of the key technology. This means that a lot of these features depend of the networking, of this networking capability. So the natural question to ask is, what happens if no network is available? What happens if the Chinese, with their long-range missiles, shoot down all the AWACS or the other, the rivet joints and all the other electronic intelligence platforms? What, they shoot down the satellites, which is something that is probably going to happen in the beginning of a near-peer confrontation. Satellites are probably going to be very, very short-lived. And all these results that we had of the F-35 being capable of inflicting 10-1, 15-1 losses, communications that are not available. I mean, we know that the Russians, the Chinese are working a lot on the capability of actually interrupting this mechanism and breaking this communication mechanism, this network-centric warfare, which is part of the United States Air Force doctrine and the NATO doctrine in general. They are really working to ways or mechanisms to throw wrenches in the throw spanners in the gears, and and as I explained in a previous video, we don't know. We really don't know what's going to be the interaction. Maybe everything from the Western side is going to work beautifully, and in this case, Chinese and Russian are going to last 3 days. But most likely is not going to happen. And by the way, I'm pretty much convinced that these kind of confrontations have zero probability of going nuclear, and they will be of such a scale they can't be short. They will be very long, because at some point there will be so heavy losses that you just can't stop. Both parts will need a victory before asking for peace. So this is something that, in my view, it may really happen. It may really happen. And well, actually, again, the aircraft is an extremely capable, a very capable platform. But if you remove this feature, again, it falls back to the level of other 4+ platforms. So what's the point of having a fifth generation platform? The idea that keeps going in around my mind is probably much more useful to have. No, sorry, just let me look at you. I mean, the idea that I keep having is that it is probably better to have a limited number of platforms of this kind, stealth platform capable of penetration in contested airspace, very capable of penetration in contested airspace, very capable of attacking high-value target, and then the rest may be something which is not as sophisticated, maybe a bit cheaper, that you can produce in larger number. That's my idea. I'm not alone, but I'm definitely not the mainstream from this point of view. But anyway, that's up to you. We can discuss this. Just let me know what you think. Moving on, point number 4. What if you are not the USA? In the sense that quite a lot of F-35s have been bought by foreign countries. And you are buying a system that actually depends from the United States much more than it used to be. I mean, the supply chain of the F-35 is international, but apart from pretty much something around propulsion, all the key technologies are actually American. Actually, the American went to quite a great length to make sure that there was no technology transfer between the United States and the other users. The other countries are just users. And the system that you get is really depending from assets actually available only in the United States, because, for example, or are not necessarily on the under the sovereign control of the operator, because, for example, the scenario files are something that depends of a level of intelligence that pretty much only the United States has. All the others actually cooperate, but what the word? The concentration point where all these informations are consolidated and translated into a format that can be used into the databases for the menaces that are available for the aircraft. It happens in the United States, basically. I think they're building something in also somewhere else in the world, but there are a limited number of facilities where this may happen, and basically are all under the American control. To be honest, the same is true for the data coming from the maintenance system, the ALICE of the replacement. And actually, I have to say on this point, the sovereignty problem is being actually addressed. Italy was one of the first, my native country, Italy was one of the first to work on this actually, and apparently downstream the ALICE, they've put something hardware solution that blocks the information that we don't want to put into the don't want to go to the other side of the Atlantic or go outside the sovereign control of Italy. And so this is something that is actually being addressed, and the United States have also recognized that this was a problem, and they are accepting that this is going to be addressed. However, I wouldn't be surprised if a country that has the F-35 that for some reason is using the aircraft to do something which is not approved by the United States, wakes up one morning and finds that the aircraft doesn't start. I really wouldn't be surprised. I have nothing to prove this. It's my speculation, but I wouldn't be surprised. So, point number 5. I said before that a near-peer confrontation is probably going to be a long and conventional affair. The F-35 gives its best, and it's been designed around smart weapons, guided weapons of every kind that is available in the US arsenal. The point is, those may run out. Binkov, which is sometimes is ridiculous, but some of its analyses are really spot on. Some of their analyses are really spot on. They made some calculations based on the actual consumption in the current conflicts, saying no, but at least considering that it's probably going to take 1 year, 1 year and a half to ramp up the production. Are there enough smart weapons for 1 year? And he said, yes. Yes, probably not. Not too many to waste, but they probably yes. Well, this is true for the United States first. and is not the same for the other countries that have the F-35 that has way fewer intelligent ammunitions and smart weapons to be used. Second, I think I have reason to believe that he has been probably a bit optimistic. They've been a bit optimistic when they calculated the use of the weapons. For example, if you have a lot of aircraft that come back damaged, also the weaponry will be damaged. So you may be, even if you didn't use the weaponry, you may need to scratch the weapons because they've been damaged and they cannot be repaired. They're not economic to be repaired. So, plus I believe that in a near-peer confrontation, the store consumption, the ammunition consumption will be much higher than, for example, in situations like Syria or even Desert Storm or even the Balkans or Iraq 2003 and so on. But anyway, that's a question that I have. It may end up in a near-peer confrontation to actually have to operate with dumb weapons. How good is for that? Probably it is exceptional and outstanding, and we just don't know because it's considered a very minor capability today. But it's a question that I have. And the question that I have is how well could it do close air support? Because the way the United States Air Force is planning to do close air support is actually with stuff like the small diameter bomb or guided weapons from afar. If you run out of those, and it is really, really convenient to drop a JDAM on a machine gun, these are questions that I have. Maybe it's just me not knowing, maybe it's just us not knowing, but that's something which I'm actually asking myself. So point 5, when we run out of smart weapons, how good is it? Mind, this probably is not going to be any worse of any 4th generation or 4++ generation aircraft in the same position. But then again, why you need a 5th? Or why you need that many 5th generation aircraft? Bonus! So basically near the end. I've spoke for 37 minutes, which is very, very long. I spoke too much, definitely. If just one is shot down, the myth of the F-35 will be shattered. The aura of invincibility that is actually being built around the aircraft is going to be shattered. Now, this is more PR, and in a large-scale confrontation, it will be quickly forgotten because you will start losing dozens of aircraft every day, but if not more, actually. But from the point of view of the pilots that have grown with the trust of with the total trust on their aircraft, this may be problematic. They may end up being more cautious. They may end up being less aggressive. I don't know. Maybe it's just a stupid thing. Maybe the training will go beyond all of this and will cover all of this. Maybe not, but I still think that but I'm sure you will agree with me that I still think that the psychological component of war exists and has not gone away just because today we use a lot of technology. So this is my criticism as I've explained. So the aircraft in itself is great, but it is designed to work in a specific way. It will be effective if used within a specific context, in a specific doctrinal environment. What if the doctrine doesn't work? What if what you expect to happen is not going to happen? Now, I will close, that's my doubt at the end. I will close with this citation, this quote from one of you guys that said, the first victim of high technology war is high technology war itself, which is something I wholeheartedly agree, to be honest. I'm sorry, I lost the name of the person who left the comment. If he's watching this, please just contact me somehow on the Discord server, or just leave a comment somewhere, or just email me, because you need to be recognized somewhere, maybe in a post or anything like that, because it is something that I wholeheartedly agree. So, this concludes my presentation. I hope I gave you something to think about, because that's basically what I wanted to do. Now let's have our usual conversation. We have 20 minutes, but we can probably stay a bit more and have some chats. Let me know what you think, or if you have any questions or any comments and so on. That's perfectly fine. Well, there are 158 people connected now. It's so many. So thank you. I don't know how it's sort of difficult for me to understand why it is so fascinating to watch a middle-aged person speaking about combat aircraft. But well, thank you very much. It's great to have found you all, because we are mostly like-minded, at least on this subject. So let's see what is in the what's in the chat. Again, the I've seen that goes very quick. I can't answer everything, but the most interesting things I will like to address. That's a good quote. Yes, it was a good quote. Imagine if you lose some and have to wait years to replace them. Yeah, that's the point, in the sense that probably in a war economy, in a multi-year situation, you can ramp up the production. But I really don't see building more than a few hundreds every year anyway. Yeah? And that's a problem, but it's not just the F-35. All modern weapons have this problem. Okay, Sixth Republic. Why did US and Russia go for trapezoidal or semi-delta wing, Pularis, but for the fourth generation fighter, while the Europeans went for delta wing? It is explained in the video about the delta wing, actually. We're talking about that. In synthesis, delta canard is more efficient. In synthesis, delta canard is more efficient, but they basically, Americans and Russians didn't trust them, didn't trust the solution. Okay, Alex B. Mures. No, he's talking about nuclear war. I said, I believe that large-scale confrontation has exactly zero probabilities of going nuclear. Because among powers that have the possibility to annihilate each other, what's going to happen is that if, I don't know, the President of the United States authorizes the use of a small number of tactical weapons to save, I don't know, a couple of army divisions, or in a very critical situation, saving some American forces, what will happen is that someone either in the army or in the administration will steadfastly refuse to use those weapons because they know that that's just the beginning of a reaction that will obliterate or so heavily damage the United States. There are a lot of simulation where there have been lots of simulations and exercises where people were not told that what they were doing was an exercise, that most people didn't turn the key. Or there was someone nearby the people who were going to turn the key that actually stopped them before turning the key. So the probability of going nuclear is 0. It's very, very, very small, from my point of view. Which is even worse because what we are left is a conventional war where there will be, I don't know, maybe two American carriers group being sunk in the first 2 or 3 weeks. And then the United States, what does? Ask for peace? No, it needs to inflict a similar damage to China or to Russia or whatever. And so the war will drag on. I definitely hope nothing like this is going to happen, because it will be something really, really, really terrible. The F-35B needs a long-range land attack anti-ship missile that can be carried inside a smaller base. It would like as a slightly smaller version of the Norwegian Joint Strike Weapon. Yes, I believe so. Yes, it's reasonable. Considering the fact that the F-35 will be disappeared. Considering the fact that the F-35 will fast be degraded to a 4.5 level, would having the large numbers enable the US to have 5th generation aircraft late in the war? I mean, yes, of course you try to produce the 5th generation, but you may well end up having to go with the high-low mix, the one that I was speaking before, with a limited production of high-end platforms for the most dangerous and most difficult missions, and a lot of simpler platforms, F-16-like, to understand, modernized F-16-like, to actually keep grinding your way through. If people won't push the button when they think it's real, why not tell them it's a drill when it isn't? Well, that's not that easy. People is actually not stupid. They understand these things. It's not that easy. These were pretty much psychological tests in control conditions. Sir Gods, Italy will drop tactical mozzarella sticks and the foes will be too bloated to make decisions. Yep, that's definitely something we can do. It's a secret weapon. You discovered us. John Greenback, sounds like the idea of Ender's Game. I loved that book, but I'm not really understanding what you mean, what the parallel in here. But I really loved that book, and I liked the film too. Actually, it wasn't too bad. Alpha Wave, Su-57 can do no wrong. Su-75 has 5 strands. No, I'm not going to make those videos. That's something. Every time when I speak about a country or something about a long period of time, people tell me that I'm being biased. I'm not. I'm just trying to understand stuff and go in depth. And going in depth for a long time, you speak about stuff. And often, when you go in depth, you discover that the tranchant opinions that people are showing on the internet may not be true. The US will never go to war with a nation that has the capability to strike the US mainland. They will always search for a proxy. Yes, this is actually something which I believe is reasonable, and it is something that gives me some hope that we are not going to have an open... What do you think of the Kingsnade proposal? I made a short about that. It's not a proposal. It's nothing. It is Hashkit, I believe, that spoke with a retired designer or an ex-designer. And they said if the United States Air Force, if the Air Force wants a new aircraft, how could it be like? And this gentleman came up with that sort of concept. It is just a concept from press sources. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. You won't see it anytime soon. The aircraft, but I've read the article. The assumptions made sense. The aircraft sort of made sense. But obviously there's much more than that. It was fun seeing C.W. Le Mans trash talking the Su-57 until he saw it fly at Max 21. No, it was a great thing. Oh, there is a new member, Alex B. Mures. Thank you very much. Is there any news on the laser weapons on the F-35? No, as far as I know, I haven't seen anything recently. There is this PUD which is being tested for the F-16 actually, and that is actually has a laser that is said to be powerful enough to be capable of damaging an air-to-air missiles, but. I will see it. I will believe it when I see it, honestly. Everything is possible. It just could be me being ignorant. That's why the US interest in the Toscano. So it's the Tucano, which is Toscano is in Italian is someone from Tuscany actually, but no, that's an interesting concept. And okay, I can probably tell you at this stage I have a script. I need to still record it, but I have a script about the role that an aircraft like the Tucano light attack fighter can have in a large-scale confrontation. But it is, it will come out in the coming weeks. It's an interesting concept. Basically, just quickly, basically, it's easy to build. You can build thousands, and you can lose as many as you want and don't care too much. You don't need to train the pilots too much. Low technology, as Stalin used to say. I think it was Stalin. Is to say the quantity has a quality of its own. Also, I was wondering what you thought about the benefits of an AESA on a swash plate like the Gripen versus the multiple arrays on the Sukhoi 57. Pros and cons, but is one superior? Well, probably if you can afford or manage to have more antennas, is better. The swash plate, actually believe they call it the repositioner in literature. It's a clever idea for solving probably the one drawback of the AESA radars, which is the fact that the cone is relatively small. The cone that you can oh my God! Probably, if you're listening with earbuds or phones, you're probably deaf by now. Sorry, very sorry. it's a very intelligent way for actually solving the problem that the beam of an AESA radar cannot be steered too much. Will you ever make a video about the economic behind the aircraft manufacturing industry? Please, it's a great topic. Just disable the comments if you fear the trolls. Thank you for the great work. Now, the problem is that you need to speak about economics. And when you get to economics, yeah, that's a minefield because it's a very ideological subject. So there's a lot of ideology and almost fideistic positions about that. So I don't know. I'm always tempted, to discuss this, explain how war economies actually work or can work and so on. But I'm afraid I'm going to be drowned by people telling me you are fucking total idiot. And anyway, there are 2 or 3 things that I can speak about, knowing what I'm talking about. One is IT, which is my day job. The other one is probably sound or production, hi-fi, because it's something which I like. The third, I like music, these things. The third one is aircraft. Economics is something midway. I'm probably not entirely. I have 0 qualification in economics. I'm just self-learner. So I don't know exactly what to do. Have you anything to say about the website The Drive and the RQ-180 flying over the Philippines? Sorry, I don't know the episode. I missed the episode. I missed the news. Can't help you. SAP work with Scrum, modifying the fighter continuously. Comparing to Lockheed Martin, what advantage does this give regarding upgradability? Yes, so working in IT, I'm very familiar with agile methodologies, Scrum, these kind of things. From an aircraft perspective, I see it's problematic at the beginning. You can't just build an aircraft and then it crashes, then doesn't matter, let's build another one. It's just too expensive, it's dangerous, and you just can't do that. After that, probably to manage the projects, incremental improvements, they're probably, it's more effective. I grew up with the classical waterfall methodologies, but in the last, say, 5-10 years, I definitely moved toward Scrum because, it is more acceptable. That's the point. Nobody's actually accepting that you disappear for 6 months while you develop and then you suddenly reappear. Back when the F-15 and the F-14 were being designed, radar range were constrained by the dish size somewhat. Is this still true with AESA radar? The radar equation is still there. There have been some progress in antenna sensitivity, but the concept that AESA are not necessarily much better in terms of raw power than the conventional radar. They are comparable, but it depends on many things. To be honest, it's a complex situation. It's a complex thing. No, the advantage of the AESA radar is the fact that it can be LPI, that is much more versatile. You can do much more stuff with an AESA radar. Is it true the F-35 that if the F-35 flies for a long time, its paint fade off because it gets hot and lose the stealth? Nope. As far as I know, the problem happened just once or twice with the tail cone, with the tails on the tail surfaces, but where there was the lamination of the F-35 coating. Mind the F-35 is not, well, is painted, but the stealth coating is not a paint, is not exactly a paint, is a sort of a looks like plastic. The noise. It's something squash on it. Anyway, so it's not just paint. No, it's a layer that has some thickness and is a layer that has some thickness, so it's less vulnerable than the coating on the F-22 or the B-2, for example. Alex, great content. Great content. The new member. Great content. I hugely appreciate the engineering point of view and hard to find info being an engineering and aviation and jet fighter passionate people. Pilot few years ago. I love the channel. Well, thank you very much. Why so many countries are buying the F-35 without any technical and know-how transfer? It's completely opposite the purpose of building a new fighter. Yeah, well, the main reason is political. The F-35 has been the mainstay of politica, has been used by the United States as a political tool to increase the export. I mean, the aircraft, if everything goes well, if nobody is actually stopping it, if everything goes well, if you can apply the doctrine that has been built to operate within, yes, the aircraft is outstanding. So that's probably the reason. It's easy to identify. Someone before was talking about the decision of the Swiss decision of actually using the F-35, which is a bit surprising, to be honest, because the Switzerland is really not integrated into the NATO, friendly, but they're not integrated. And I mean, they issued a very, very dry report saying, does it fit? That's the one that fits better our requirements, full stop. But still, I'm a bit perplexed. But okay, there's something probably worth digging deeper into. Andy Osborne, in 2020, F-35C is limited to Mach 1.3 to 50 cumulative seconds, and F-35B is limited to 40 seconds to prevent damage. Has that been changed? No, that was the afterburner. Okay, that was the use of the afterburner. If I think so, the maximum speed that you can achieve is somewhat limited. Mind, this is a problem. I don't know if it has been fixed or not, honestly. I haven't seen anything recently, but this has been a problem. But even other aircraft do have a maximum time on afterburner, a bit longer. Could be minutes, could be a couple of minutes in some cases, but again, it's one of those things that are not really published, but there is a limitation for everyone because the thermal load that the afterburner is actually putting on the engine carcass and the surrounding structure is very, very high. Can the F-35 defeat the F-22? Normally the best pilot with the best tactics and the best support wins, provided that it's not flying in a biplane. What is the maintenance hours per flight hour for the F-35? Geez, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know exactly. What I've read is that the availability is still below the statutory 80%. And in terms of pure flight hour, of pure maintenance hour, is not terrible. I've heard that is not terrible. It's comparable with other jets. The problem that people waste a lot of time with the Alice, waste a lot of time for the logistics, which is a problem that is actually being addressed. But again, more money and resources and vulnerable processes and procedures and equipment has been thrown at the problem to fix it. It's not the problem itself. The problem, you fix it. The day a conflict opens, or in the couple of weeks where tension rises before the conflict opens, all these logistic management problems will immediately go away, because all the procedures will be immediately absolutely simplified. So that is not the problem. The problem is that you need to have people doing something else, something more, something special than other jets. With the Gripen, pretty much all the maintenance, almost all the maintenance, bar the major refurbishment, can be done pretty much on the side of the highway by a limited group by mobile, with a mobile workshop and a limited group of people. It was designed to do so, and they eventually sacrificed probably some complexity or technology to being capable of doing so. The F-35 is the exact opposite. I don't care how much people or how much complexity, how much stuff I need to make it fly. I just want the best of the best. And it's not the best of the best. They reach a very high level. One of the best, definitely. And that's the thing. Will the chip shortage cause problems for the defense industry? Yes, but not for the key stuff. The key stuff is, the stuff that actually goes on an aircraft or goes on a tank or goes into a ship is fine. But again, to keep the F-35 flying, you need laptops. The laptops don't have a bespoke, custom-built chip. They are ruggedized commercial laptops. Those may suffer from the chip shortage. On a ship, it's the same problem. So that's the kind of problem that you may have. So the military stuff is normally built in a separate way, in separate conditions, on separate processes and so on. So normally it's not a problem. It's everything else that you need to have around it to make it operable that may be missing. I heard uploading a combat map into the planes takes several hours too, differing with complexity of the map. No, I think you're referring to the scenario files. The scenario files are those files that pretty much are the libraries of all the menaces that are available, that are used by the sensors, the radar warning receiver, the electronic support measures to actually recognize the opponents. We discussed recently non-cooperative target recognition. The databases that are used in target recognition are in those files. And there are some, on the F-35, apparently we are talking about hundreds of gigabytes. And this is one of the problems that I mentioned. there were just 2 centers in the United States that can produce these files and distribute. So you need to do that. You need to have a process that consolidates all the electronic information, all the electronic intelligence into these 2 sensors, and then they need to stuff everything into the database and build the files and then redistribute them back. What do you do if you don't have high-speed internet or a secure connection that is fast enough? If you have it, it's not going to take hours. If you don't, it may take hours. If you are cut off from the internet, you don't get the last update. Nicolas Ferrante, I think the Gauss says use of maintenance people are finding themselves waiting on contractors for advice and want to get around the Lockmart in terms of spare parts and support equipment. Realistic, reasonable, may well happen. Jean-Baptiste, I think, is it true that some radar can identify a plane just by the signature of the engine turbine? Go on the channel, search for the video about non-cooperative target recognition. It is explained there. Precision gaming, actually, couldn't they use something like a physical hard drive to get around the lack of internet? Well, if you are on Guam, and I think one of the centers where these files are produced are in Florida, you need to ship the hard drive to there. Another piece of the logistical chain that is actually required to keep the aircraft operational. Andy Osborne, do you think that Israel were wise to have their own version of the F-35? Actually, Israel is the only country that has some level of access to the software of the aircraft. So I think it's reason. Yeah, I think it's a reasonable privilege. If someone can get that, is definitely something is definitely an advantage. Can the F-35 with a 25mm gun replace the A-10 Warthog with a 30mm gun for closer support and anti-tank role? Okay, closer support is one of my soapbox talks probably, because as I was saying before, the United States Air Force, the USAF, the Air Force wants to do closer support with intelligent weapons, guided weapons. They are perfectly happy to drop a small diameter bomb on a machine gun nest, which honestly seems a waste of resources. But if you have a lot of resources, you're maybe perfectly happy to do that. But the problem again is a near-peer scenario when you may run out of this kind, or you need to save for a high-paying you need to save these weapons for a high-paying target, and you can't use them again. Then you need to fly low and use the cannon or use dumb weapon. You need to use dumb weapons, and rather than being concerned about the caliber of the cannon, I would rather be concerned by the fact that the F-35 is quite vulnerable in this, even to the fire of in the sense I was asking before, is it capable to operate even if it's partially damaged? That's what we would like to know. I don't know if this has been fixed or not, but up to some up to some. I've heard that the first versions didn't have self-sealing fuel tanks. And by the way, there is a lot of fuel on the F-35. So it's quite easy that if a couple of projectiles from a machine gun go through the structure, it's quite likely that they will hit some fuel. Can you do closer support with a platform like that? Maybe the problem is solved. Maybe it's me just not knowing, perfectly happy. I mean, all this discussion tonight is really speculative. I mean, and it is a minority of, and it is really not mainstream. The mainstream says, okay, this, that. No, we are pretty much sure. We are 99% sure that the Air Force doctrine is going to come out on top against both Russia and China. Full stop. There's no problem. Some people have doubts. I mean, I like history. It's another thing that I actually tend to study. And in history, I mean, in history, I mean, you have a lot of examples of countries or empires that won a war, and in winning a war, they actually seeded, they planted the seeds for the defeat the following time. So that's it. Are Russian anti-air systems, S-300, 400, 500, capable against stealth aircraft? And what do you think of the Chinese quantum radar advertised as able to spot stealth aircraft? So the Chinese quantum radar is actually a feasible concept. We don't know how well it's working yet. We have no specific news, not even declarations. But it is a reasonable thing. Coming to the Russians, they have plenty of these low-frequency radars that can spot the aircraft, but can't guide a weapon toward the aircraft. But still, it is still is a feasible. So some level of effectiveness must exist. As I always say, there is. I mean, the people is actually. I mean, pretty much since when the United States came out with the F-117, pretty much the whole world is working on how to defeat stealth. And it's 30 years now. It seems really impossible that no progress has been made. I see the 28 trillion debt of the United States and imagine a near-peer war. I shake my head. Now, this is one of the things that exactly don't want to talk about. Because if I told you that pretty much a good solution for those 28 trillion debts would be actually a near-peer war, probably I would be submerged by trolls, comments, and of any kind trying to teach me something, which is fine. It's not that I know everything, but so I'm not telling this. Michael Runnels. India must send the engines of their Sukhoi 35 30 MKI, I think, but back to Russia if they need repair. How is this different than depending on the US for spare parts to fix damaged F-35? If no, in terms of spare parts, no, it's not different. The difference is that is not just spare parts. I mean, historically, if you buy a weapon with some technology, you also buy the spare parts. But if you are really invested into the weapon, if you're really building an ecosystem around that, you may become capable of actually building parts or making upgrades on your own. Consider, for example, the F-14. The United States never particularly loved it. The F-14 Starfighter, I mean. The United States never particularly liked it. In Italy, the Germans actually pretty much was dubbed it the Widowmaker. In Italy, it was absolutely loved. They had a very long career. They reached almost the 2000, and the latest versions were quite advanced, to be honest, and had active, could shoot active weapons, active air-to-air missiles. They were used as air-to-ground platform. They were big particular. So, but this was possible because there was no limitation. We could do everything we wanted to the F-104s. You can't do that on the F-35. This is the difference. You can't dismount them because every black box in the F-35 is an anti-tamper system. If you try to open them, I don't know what really happens. Probably either burns, explodes, or probably zots all the internal components, so you can replicate them. Do something like that, just to avoid the transfer of technology. The software, which is the key of the performance of the aircraft, is closed source, is strictly closed source, bar for Israel that has some access to it. And that's a problem. The F-35 is much more dependent on the United States than anything else. Run DMC 555 Michael. Russia is unlikely to interfere like the USA, as it does not have the same global interest or commitment to strange and ill-conceived political decision making in foreign policy. Yes, probably the friction between the United States and Russia is largely manufactured. There is little practical reason for that. The friction with China, no, it's actually real. Albert Callal, so open source operating systems is coming for fighter jets. No, it's not open source, but for example, for the Eurofighter, sorry, not for the Eurofighter, for the Gripen or the Rafale, when you buy the jet, you can buy the sources of the software, and you can keep developing your software. So it's not open source. You pay for it. You pay for the source apart. Yeah, video on laser-guided John McKenzie. Yeah, video on laser-guided copper. A video on laser-guided weapons or just how they work could be an interesting video. That's something that I am planning to do. Not very soon, but it is in the pipeline. Okay, I see it is a bit. So there are 160 people, which is enormous public. Thank you very much. What time is it? It's okay. We've been here for 1 hour and 25 minutes. So probably I start having a very dry tongue. So probably we need to stop. So thank you. Thank you very much for so many people turning up for this live stream. I really appreciate this fact. I hope it was interesting. I hope I gave you something to think about, which is basically the one thing that I want to do. I mean, from my, I mean, from the educational point of view, that's what I want to do. Just give people some other, yeah, like giving information. When you start throwing the information out there, you actually realize that you can only just give, you can only scratch the surface. So as long as I give a reason to people who are actually looking for and starting for themselves, which is something which I believe is important, I'm happy. And as long as I give people a reason to think about from a different perspective of the problems that do exist, again, it's something that I'm happy about. So, okay, I suppose it's better if I go and drink something. And anyway, thank you very, 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 very much for watching. Your presence has been really appreciated. Thank you very much for your questions. Thank you for thank you to Alex for becoming a new member. Okay, see you with the next video, I suppose, or the next live stream. I haven't set the publications date for everything yet, but yeah, that will be. So, thank you very much and have a good night. For me, it's night actually now. So, bye. Bye.